Now that The Boys has officially ended, fans everywhere are making up these crazy fan theories to try to make sense of what this series was all about. What the hell just happened? What was the point of all of this? People are asking that question, and they're coming up with these ideas that are either making or breaking the show. Because, in many ways, if these fan theories are not true, if they're not real, then the plot is kind of bad. So these are ways to try to explain, in some ways, the plot holes of the show. First coming up is the first theory. Okay, the first theory, which is that the Deep never was able to talk to fish. He did not have that ability. Think about it. Think about why that makes sense, okay? Fish don't have a central cortex. They can talk. What are you talking to me? A fish can talk? That makes no sense. They cannot speak. A fish cannot speak. It cannot communicate to a human being. That can never happen. The only way that that can ever occur, because fish don't have a brain, by the way. Sure, dolphins, yeah, debatable. You can probably, they have ways to communicate, echolocation, stuff like that. Fish can, like, dolphins can do that. An octopus is pretty smart, okay? But fish have no language capacity. They have no capacity for language. And we've seen the Deep speak to many different types of species. Okay, he dated an octopus, for God's sakes. He dated an octopus. That would never happen. Okay, so why? Why was he able to do this? Fans are theorizing that he was just a crazy person. He was never able to speak to fish or sea life or marine life at all. He was just not able to do it. And that communication, whatever communication he thought he had, was because he was a crazy person. All those things were just manifestations of his own thoughts about himself. That's it. That is it. He was never able to talk to fish. None of that. It was all a lie, bro. None of that. And that's why he died, by the way, because he hated himself, his self-hatred. Because think about why that makes sense. The oil spill that happened, how would the fish know that it was the Deep? And they falsely thought, he was falsely accused here in this case, okay? Which makes sense, right? Because he was an abuser and he was never uncovered what he did to Starlight, you know, that sort of thing. He was an abuser and he didn't get punished for it. And in the end, he got punished for something that he didn't do. You know, there's an irony in that whole situation. But the fish wouldn't have any way of accusing him. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You know, when Samuel L. Jackson was confronting him, like he was a shark. And he was like, "We're gonna get you." When I first watched that scene, it kind of feels like he's having a hallucination. Like he's having a mental breakdown. What if it was just a shark that's swimming in the waves and the Deep is just having a crash out over that? It's possible. It's very possible. Moving on to the second theory. Okay, the second theory, which is the ending of The Boys. How come Homelander died so quickly? How come he was not able to fly off into space? How come he was such an easy target? What? Are you telling me that would happen? Homelander wasn't even acting like himself when he was getting killed. He was begging, pleading for his life, saying that he'll do anything just to live. Why? I mean, he was born a soup. He was born with this compound V. Like, if he loses the power, he would not be alive. That makes no sense. Like, why would he be a human when he was not born a human, bro? What is that logic? People have brought that up. And it makes a lot of sense. What if Homelander was just a clone? He was just a clone. He was not himself. He was a copy. And we're gonna see him in the prequel, sequels, whatever, as a new type of black noir. That's gonna be the real Homelander. What do you think about that? What do you think about that theory? That writing, that fan writing? It kind of ruins the ending, doesn't it? What if, I mean, it's difficult to think that Homelander wouldn't have a contingency plan. He would reach the top. He would reach the top of his power. And he would not have any type of continuation of government, you know, like we do nowadays with the president. He wouldn't have that. Are you serious? Now, in defense of this theory not being true and Homelander actually being dead, this theory lies on the idea that Homelander would predict that he could die or be killed, and that doesn't go together with his character. She just wouldn't think that. It would just make no sense to him. To himself, he is immortal. He's unbeatable. He's undefeated. As a narcissist, right, on the inside, he feels very weak and worthless. But on the outside, what he thinks nonstop is that he's very powerful. And he cannot be killed. It's just impossible in his mind. He thinks he's immortal, so he would not have this plan in mind. But if he did, it makes sense, right? He could still be alive. You could see him in a future series. The writers are never gonna do that because the bad guy needs to lose, of course. He needs to lose. The villain needs to be wiped out. They're never gonna bring him back. Okay, that's not. But some of the fans want this to be the case because they created this theory. Let me know what you think. I think that's kind of plausible. It's an interesting theory because Homelander was killed so instantly in that finale. It's almost like he was a copy of himself, a replicant, if you will. Theory number 3. Okay, theory number 3. Hughie. Hughie is the main character. He's like the audience's perspective into this crazy, insane world. He's like the unknowing audience invited into the world of these soups. Okay? What if he was insane? He was just insane. None of those things happen because they're way too crazy for this world. Think about it. This is a show that makes fun of superheroes, but at the same time it goes into the same cliches sometimes that regular superhero movies do. The Homelander gets beaten by the power of friendship, bro. Like, what? You have the main good characters, they hold down the bad guy. A ring of stray of power goes out from her heart, and Homelander is defeated. That's one of the most cliche things possible. What if all of those things were a hallucination of Hughie's deranged mind? First episode. Okay, hear me out. First episode. Hughie, his girlfriend, she gets run over by a train. After you see that scene, the show takes a completely different turn. Thematically, tonally, it feels like a complete 180 from what was before it. That's when you start seeing all these soups everywhere. You know, there's splatter, there's gore everywhere, all these insane things. Hughie is after that cast into an insane world, basically, that he doesn't know how to cope with. What if he lost his mind? In that moment, fans are thinking that he probably lost his mind. He was never the same after that, and he could not cope with reality. He was so shocked by his GF getting run over by a bus or something that he lost his mind then and there. To cope with that, he imagined that a superhero went through her. The main doctor at the insane asylum is like Homelander, and his name is something that starts with H, you know, Doctor something, you know. Then you have Billy Butcher, and his real name is Bob or something like that, you know. Then you have Starlight, and she's a nurse or something. It's not that implausible. It rewrites a lot of the story. What do I think about that? I think that's a very dissatisfying. Out of all the theories, to be honest, that theory is probably the worst, because we all hate it when writing is basically devolved into, and then it was just a dream. He woke up from his dream. That is the worst writing, the worst cliche in any book, movie, script, anything that you can ever do. So you never want to do that. Okay, but on the other hand, it explains a lot of the inconsistencies of the show. It explains some of the bad scenes. It explains characters like Sister Sage, who are supposed to be like ultimately super smart. She's supposed to be like the Sherlock Holmes of that series, and she has zero positive impact on anything, right? Is that just bad writing? Are these things just bad writing? Or is it actually something deeper than that? Is it something that's more complex, if you will? Let me know what you think, but in a lot of ways, these are just ways they're copes to cope with a bad ending. People want more. And it's unfortunate when a series ends, like, the Game of Thrones thing, and then they don't do a sequel to try to rectify that. They do a prequel. You can find out why the series started, but you're not gonna get anything that can like wipe out the terrible ending after that, which is really unfortunate. That is an unfortunate thing, man, because you cannot rectify the ending. You can't alter it in your mind, and this is why you're getting these fan theories at the same time, is because you can't fix it. It's unfixable. The ending was way too quick. There was no scorched earth. Homelander didn't cause any havoc or any destruction. But a lot of these theories are explaining part of why that is. Maybe it was a copy. Maybe the Deep didn't speak to Fish. Maybe the Deep killed him in the end. You're getting a lot of AI-generated slop of that, which, there are a lot of interesting twists and turns. What are your crazy fan theories? Let me know in the comments below. And that's pretty much it. 3 theories. They kind of make sense. And they're kind of interesting. So, bye.